The peaceful Loraxians lived happily on their beautiful green planet for thousands of years. Their bodies were like plants. They had soft skin that looked like leaves and could make food from sunlight. They built amazing cities that blended with the forests and never harmed their world. But one day everything started to change. The weather on their planet became unpredictable. Hot winds dried up their lakes. Strange storms destroyed their homes. The Loraxians noticed their children were getting sick because their bodies couldn't handle these new conditions. The elders gathered in their great tree council chamber. "Our world is dying," said the oldest among them, his leaf-like skin now pale and withering. "We must ask for help or our people will not survive." They sent out a desperate message to the stars using their advanced technology. The signal traveled through space, bouncing between relay stations built by ancient civilizations. "Please help us. Our world is changing too fast. Our children are dying. We need your knowledge to save our home." The message reached many alien civilizations. The blue-skinned Azurians received it first, then the crystal beings of Proxima. The floating gas giants of Nebula 7 heard it too. These species had traveled space for millions of years. They had seen planets die before. They had rules about when to help and when to let nature take its course. Far away on a small blue planet called Earth, humans had just figured out how to listen to these deep space messages. They were new to space travel. Other aliens still viewed them as primitive creatures who had only recently stopped fighting among themselves. Commander Lee sat at the control station of Earth's first deep space communication center when the message came through. She listened to the translation and immediately called the United Space Command. "There's a species dying out there," she explained to General Patel. "They call themselves the Loraxians. Their world is facing climate disaster, and they don't have the technology to fix it." The general frowned. Humans had almost destroyed their own planet before learning better ways. They knew all too well what the Loraxians were facing. "We're still new to the galactic community," he said. "The older species might not want us getting involved." But something about the desperation in the Loraxian message touched the humans. Who heard it? Earth had faced its own environmental challenges. They had almost lost everything before they learned to work together. "We should at least see if we can help," Commander Lee insisted. "Even if the other species think we're too primitive." The human leaders talked it over and decided to send their newest spaceship, the Hope, to visit the Loraxians. It would be the farthest humans had ever traveled. Captain Amara looked at her crew as they prepared for the long journey. "We don't know what we'll find," she told them, "but if there's any chance we can help, we have to try." The Hope left Earth's orbit, carrying scientists, doctors, and environmental experts. They didn't know that several advanced alien civilizations had already received the same message and decided the Loraxians weren't worth saving. They didn't know they were heading toward a situation that would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. As the ship accelerated toward the distant star system, the humans aboard had no idea they were about to become the only hope for an entire civilization. The giant ships of the Galactic Council darkened the skies above the Loraxian cities. Their vessels were beautiful. Some looked like glowing crystals, others like perfect silver eggs. The Loraxians watched with hope in their hearts as the ships landed in their dying fields. The council members stepped out wearing special suits to protect themselves from the changing Loraxian atmosphere. They looked strange to the Loraxians. Some had blue skin, others had 4 arms, and a few floated above the ground instead of walking. But they all shared one thing. They were powerful species who had mastered space travel thousands of years ago. "Thank you for coming," said the Loraxian leader, bowing low. His once vibrant leaf skin had turned brown at the edges. "Our children are getting sick. Our crops are failing. We've tried everything, but we don't know how to stop the climate changes." The council representatives nodded politely and took out their scanning devices. For 3 days, they tested the soil, analyzed the atmosphere, and studied the Loraxian biology. The plant people showed them their cities, their dying forests, and their children's hospitals, filled with the youngest Loraxians struggling to breathe in the new air. On the 4th day, the council called for a meeting. "We have reviewed your situation," said the Azurian representative, her blue skin shimmering under the weak Loraxian sun. "It is unfortunate. but we cannot help you." The Loraxians couldn't believe what they were hearing. "But you have the technology. We've seen your terraforming abilities. You've saved other worlds before." The tall representative from Proxima shook his crystal head. "Those worlds had potential. Your species is too specialized. Your bodies can only survive in a very specific environment. Even if we fixed your planet today, any small change in the future would threaten you again." "You are evolutionarily unfit," said another council member bluntly. "Your species evolved to depend too much on perfect conditions. The laws of nature say you should adapt or—" He didn't finish the sentence, he didn't need to. "But our children," whispered the Loraxian leader. "We have millions of people. Our civilization is over 10,000 years old. We have art, music, science." The council members looked at each other uncomfortably. The most ancient among them, a gaseous being from Nebula 7, floated forward. "The council's primary law forbids interfering with natural selection. Your planet is changing. Your people cannot adapt. This is the way of all worlds, of all life. Some species survive, others do not." The Loraxians couldn't understand such coldness. How could these advanced beings just let them die? One by one, the council members returned to their ships. Some looked regretful. Others seemed relieved to leave the dying world behind. Their massive engines roared to life, sending dust swirling through the already struggling Loraxian crops. "Wait!" cried the Loraxian scientists. "At least leave us some technology. Teach us how to save ourselves." But the ships were already rising into the atmosphere. Within hours, the last council vessel disappeared from Loraxian sensors. The plant people, gathered in their great tree council chamber, now drooping and sickly like everything else on their world. "They abandoned us," said the oldest elder, his voice cracking with despair. "The most advanced species in the galaxy left us to die." No one knew what to say. Their last hope had vanished. That night, as the Loraxians tried to comfort their children and each other, a small blip appeared on their long-range scanners. Another ship was approaching their system. It was smaller than the council vessels, less impressive, built with newer, rougher technology. The humans had arrived. The human ship named Hope slowed as it entered the Loraxian atmosphere. It wasn't as sleek or impressive as the council vessels, but it was the pride of Earth's fleet. Captain Amara stood on the bridge, watching the planet's surface come into view through the main screen. "It's beautiful," she said quietly. The world below had swirling patterns of green and brown, with vast forests and winding rivers, but even from space they could see the problem. Large patches of dead vegetation and dried-up lakes scattered across the continents. "We're picking up a transmission," said Lieutenant Chen, the communications officer. "It's from the Loraxian capital." A tired voice came through the speakers. "Unknown vessel, we appreciate your interest, but please don't waste your time. The Galactic Council has already determined we cannot be saved." Captain Amara frowned. "What does that mean? Open a channel back." When connected, she introduced herself. "This is Captain Amara of the Earthship Hope. We're here to help if we can. May we land and talk?" There was a long pause before the voice answered. "You may land. But you should know the Council left yesterday. They said we're evolutionarily unfit to survive." The human crew exchanged shocked glances. Dr. Patel, the chief scientist, shook his head in disbelief. "They just left them to die?" The Hope landed in a field near the main Loraxian city. When the humans stepped out, they were met by a small group of Loraxians who looked like they hadn't slept in days. Their plant-like skin had a dull, wilted appearance. "I am Thalo, leader of the Eastern Province," said one, stepping forward. "Thank you for coming, though I don't understand why you bothered." The Council made their decision. Captain Amara extended her hand in greeting. "Humans make our own decisions. Can you show us what's happening to your world?" Over the next 2 days, the humans saw everything. They visited hospitals where young Loraxians struggled to breathe. They tested soil samples and analyzed atmospheric changes. Dr. Patel was fascinated by the Loraxians' biology. "It's remarkable," he told Captain Amara as they walked through a dying garden. "Their bodies photosynthesize like plants, but they have complex nervous systems and intelligence like animals. They evolved perfectly for this environment, but that's also their problem. They can't adapt quickly to these sudden changes. In the evening, the Loraxian elders invited the humans to their council meeting. The great chamber was built from living trees that had been carefully guided to grow into a dome. But now the trees were dying too. The council told us it is natural selection, said the oldest elder, that some species live and some die, that this is the way of the universe. Lieutenant Okafor, the environmental engineer, couldn't contain herself. That's ridiculous. Natural selection happens over millions of years. This climate shift is happening in decades. There's nothing natural about it. Captain Amara nodded. On Earth, we almost destroyed our own environment before we learned better. If we'd followed the Council's logic, humans would be extinct now. But why help us? Asked Thalo. Your species is so different from ours. You eat other living things. You cannot photosynthesize. The Council said beings like you wouldn't understand us. Captain Amara looked around at the dying trees, at the scared faces of the Loraxian children watching from the doorway. Maybe because we're different. We see things differently, she said. Maybe because humans know what it's like to face extinction, we don't accept it so easily. She stood up, making her decision. We don't have the advanced technology the Council has, but we're going to try to help you anyway. Earth has faced climate challenges before. We've developed methods to combat them. A small Loraxian child approached, touching the captain's hand with a leafy finger. Will you save us when the others wouldn't? The captain kneeled down to the child's level. We're going to try, that's what humans do. That night, Captain Amara sent a message back to Earth, requesting additional ships, supplies, and experts. They were going to need everything they could get to save this world. The human crew sat around a table in their ship, eating dinner, as they discussed how to help the Loraxians. Captain Amara noticed the plant-like aliens watching them from the doorway with a mixture of curiosity and horror. Is something wrong? She asked Thalo, who seemed unable to look away from Lieutenant Chen biting into his sandwich. You're consuming dead tissue, Thalo said quietly. The council members told us humans were dangerous because you eat other living things. They said that's why you couldn't be trusted. Captain Amara nodded slowly, understanding the misunderstanding. We're omnivores, we eat plants and animal products, but that doesn't make us monsters. Dr. Patel pushed his plate aside and pulled up some images on his tablet. Look at Earth's history. Our planet has gone through 5 major extinction events. Life had to adapt or die. Humans evolved as survivors. We can eat many different foods, live in different climates, and adjust to changing conditions. The Loraxians moved closer, fascinated despite their fear. The council species. They're mostly plant-eaters, right? Asked Lieutenant Okafor. Thalo nodded. Yes, they believe it makes them more peaceful, more evolved. But they abandoned you when things got hard, Captain Amara said gently. Maybe being too specialized isn't always good. Humans have always had to fight to survive. It made us stubborn. That night, the human team worked late into the night, analyzing data and developing plans. By morning, when the Loraxian elders arrived for an update, Captain Amara had dark circles under her eyes but a determined look on her face. We've run the models, she told them. Your planet's climate is changing too fast, even with our best technology. It would take at least 3 years to stabilize the atmosphere and regrow your forests. The Loraxians' leaf-like skin paled. 3 years? Most of us won't survive that long. That's why I'm proposing something different, Captain Amara said. A temporary relocation to Earth. The room went silent. Even the human crew looked surprised. You want us to leave our planet? Asked an elder, her voice shaking. Temporarily, Captain Amara emphasized. We have regions on Earth with stable, warm climates. We can build special biodomes that match your homeworld's original conditions. Your people can live there while we work to heal your planet. Dr. Patel stepped forward with his tablet. We've already started designing the biodomes. They would be self-contained environments with carefully controlled temperature, humidity, and light. The Loraxians looked at each other in shock. But would your people accept us? The council said humans are territorial and aggressive. Lieutenant Chen laughed. Says the council that left you to die. Look, humans aren't perfect, but we've learned a lot from our mistakes. When people need help, we help them. It's because we're omnivores, Dr. Patel explained. We understand the food chain, the cycle of life and death. We know that sometimes you have to adapt to survive. Sometimes you have to make tough choices. Captain Amara pulled up a map of Earth. Here's where we'd build the biodomes, tropical regions near the equator with plenty of sunlight for your photosynthesis. We'd need to evacuate your most vulnerable population first, children, elders, those who are already sick. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Okafor added, another team would stay here to begin the environmental restoration work. We'd install atmospherics, processors, plant genetically modified fast-growing trees to replace the dying ones, and clean your water systems. The Loraxians were overwhelmed. Why would you do this for us? It will cost so much. Captain Amara thought about this question. Looking around at her human crew, she saw the same determination in their eyes that she felt. Because we can, she said simply. Because when humans see someone drowning, we don't discuss whether they deserve to be saved. We jump in to help. It's just who we are. One of the youngest Loraxian elders stepped forward. The council said your carnivore nature makes you dangerous, but maybe it also makes you brave in ways they aren't. Captain Amara smiled. We're not asking you to trust us blindly. Send a delegation to Earth first. See the biodomes we'll build. Then decide. The oldest Loraxian elder, his skin now brown and cracking, looked at the dying world outside the window. Then he looked at the humans with their determined faces. We don't have much choice, he said. But perhaps that's not a bad thing. Perhaps the universe sent us exactly the helpers we needed. Captain Amara stood nervously in the United Earth Council chamber. Representatives from every region on Earth filled the seats, talking amongst themselves. On the screens above, millions of people watched from home. She'd never spoken to so many important people before. The Loraxians are dying, she said, her voice stronger than she felt. Their planet is becoming uninhabitable. They have maybe a year before widespread extinction begins. She showed images of the withering Loraxian children, their leaf skin, turning brown, struggling to breathe in their changing atmosphere. The chamber went quiet. And the Galactic Council just left them? Asked the representative from African Union, leaning forward in disbelief. Yes, they said the Loraxians were evolutionarily unfit and shouldn't be saved, Captain Amara replied. But I don't think we should make the same choice. For hours, the Earth representatives debated, some worried about the cost, others about diseases or cultural conflicts. A few wondered if helping might violate some galactic rule. Finally, the Brazilian representative stood up. 50 years ago, when the Amazon was burning, the world came together to save it. Now these plant people need the same help. Brazil offers land for biodomes. One by one, other nations joined. India offered engineering teams. China promised construction materials. Kenya volunteered agricultural experts. Then it's decided, said the council president. Earth will help the Loraxians. Operation Green Haven begins immediately. News of Earth's decision spread quickly through the galaxy. The Galactic Council sent stern warnings to humanity about interfering with natural selection and overstepping your place as newcomers, but the humans ignored them. On the Loraxian world, Captain Amara and Dr. Patel showed the elders the plans for Earth. The first biodomes are already being built, Dr. Patel explained, displaying holographic images of giant glass domes rising in Brazil, Indonesia, and Tanzania. They're designed to perfectly match your homeworld's original climate. We'll bring the most vulnerable first, Captain Amara added. Children, elderly, those already sick. We've converted our largest ships into medical transports. Some Loraxians still hesitated. The council warned us that humans are predators, one said. That your cities are dangerous. Lieutenant Chen smiled kindly. The biodomes will be your own space, run by your own leaders. And yes, humans eat meat, but we don't eat people. Most of us don't even eat meat every day. 2 weeks later, the first transport was ready. 5,000 Loraxian children and their caretakers gathered at the spaceport, carrying only small bundles of belongings. Many were already sick, their leaf skin pale. A tiny Loraxian girl tugged at Captain Amara's sleeve. Are there monsters on Earth? She whispered. The captain kneeled down. No monsters, just different kinds of people who want to help you. The girl nodded bravely and boarded the ship. Back on Earth, crowds gathered to watch the arrival of the first Loraxians. People brought handmade welcome signs, though they weren't sure the aliens could read them. Children released green balloons into the sky. When the ship doors opened and the first Loraxians stepped out, a cheer went up from the crowd. The plant people froze, startled by the noise, then relaxed when they realized it was a welcome. "Look at their skin," gasped a human child. "They're like walking trees. So beautiful," murmured others in the crowd. The Loraxians were quickly taken to the finished biodome, a massive glass structure filled with plants, artificial sunlight, and carefully controlled humidity. As the aliens stepped inside, their wilted bodies seemed to straighten. The children's skin began to brighten almost immediately. "It feels like home," whispered the Loraxian elder, tears forming at the corners of his eyes. Over the next months, more ships arrived. Engineers worked around the clock to build more biodomes. Scientists studied Loraxian biology to ensure the environments were perfect. Ordinary people donated time and resources. News outlets across the galaxy reported on Operation Green Haven with amazement. How could these primitive humans, barely a century into space travel, organize such a massive rescue? The Galactic Council members watched in uncomfortable silence as their predictions of human failure proved wrong. On a view screen in the Brazilian biodome, Loraxian children watched Earth children playing outside. They pressed their leaf hands against the glass, curious about these strange meat-eating creatures who had saved them when the advanced civilizations wouldn't. "They look scary with their hard skin," said one Loraxian child. "But they're kind." "Yes," said his teacher. "Sometimes. The universe surprises you." 6 months after the first Loraxians arrived on Earth, the biodomes had become small cities. Glass domes gleamed in the sunlight across Brazil, Indonesia, Tanzania, and Australia. Inside, the plant people were thriving again. Their leaf skin had regained its vibrant green color, and the children were growing taller by the day. At first, the Loraxians had stayed completely separate from humans. They were still afraid of these strange meat-eating creatures, but slowly, curiosity began to win over fear. The first real connection happened in the Brazilian biodome. A human gardener named Raj was struggling to save some rare orchids that were dying despite his best efforts. An elderly Loraxian named Vela watched him for days through the glass barrier that separated their worlds. Finally, Vela couldn't stand it anymore. She approached the human area and asked to help. Using a translator device, she explained what the flowers needed. Not more water, but a special type of fungus in the soil that the plants depended on. Raj was amazed. "How did you know that?" "Plants speak to us," Vela explained. "Not with words, but we can sense what they need." Word spread quickly. Soon, Loraxian plant experts were helping with Earth's farms and forests. They taught humans how to grow food, using less water and no chemicals. They showed ways to bring dead soil back to life. In Australia, they helped restore areas destroyed by old wildfires. "Their understanding of plant biology is incredible," Dr. Patel told Captain Amara during a visit to the Indonesian biodome. "They've helped us develop crops that grow twice as fast with half the resources. This could end food shortages in many parts of the world." But the exchange went both ways. Human teachers set up schools inside the biodomes, teaching Loraxian children about Earth science, art, and history. The aliens were especially interested in how humans had survived their own environmental disasters. "Your people nearly destroyed your planet several times," said Thalo to Lieutenant Chen during a shared meal. "Yet you always found a way to fix things." "That's our greatest strength," Chen replied. "We never give up." The most difficult challenge was food. Loraxians were horrified watching humans eat. They couldn't understand how beings could consume other living things. This created tension until a brave group of humans and Loraxians decided to talk openly about it. "We don't eat thoughtlessly," explained an elder human teacher to a group of Loraxians. "Many of us thank the plants and animals that become our food. Some of us eat only plants out of respect for animals. Those who eat meat try to ensure the animals lived good lives." "But you still take life," said a young Loraxian. "All life depends on other life," replied the teacher. "Even plants compete for sunlight and water. The difference is that humans try to be conscious of our choices." Slowly, the Loraxians began to understand. They started inviting humans into their domes for cultural exchanges. Human children were fascinated by how Loraxian children could make their leaf fingers glow in the dark or change color with their emotions. Meanwhile, the real work continued. At research centers around the world, human and Loraxian scientists worked together to develop technology to save the Loraxian homeworld. We're combining Earth's atmospheric processes with Loraxian botanical engineering, explained Dr. Patel to a group of visitors. The Loraxians can create plants that change soil chemistry much faster than anything on Earth. We're learning to speed up processes that would normally take centuries. In the testing labs, strange new plants grew, genetically modified to pull excess carbon from the air at incredible rates. Machines that could create rain clouds were being built in factories. Special fungi designed to clean polluted water were being grown in vats. But the most important work was happening in ordinary homes and schools. Loraxian families were being hosted by human families for dinner and celebrations. Human children were learning Loraxian songs. Trust was growing. One day, a human child accidentally cut her finger while visiting the biodome. A Loraxian child watched in horror as a drop of red blood appeared. "You're full of red water," the Loraxian exclaimed. The human child laughed. "It's blood. Don't you have blood?" "We have sap," the Loraxian replied, showing how a small cut on their skin released clear green liquid. The two children stared at each other, then started giggling. Different as they were, they had found something to share: curiosity about each other. That night, Captain Amara wrote in her journal, "Maybe our greatest gift to the Loraxians isn't technology, but hope. And their gift to us is remembering that all life, no matter how different, deserves a chance to survive." The message from the Galactic Council arrived at Earth's Space Command headquarters on a quiet Tuesday morning. Admiral Wong read it with a deepening frown before calling an emergency meeting with world leaders. "The Council has officially censured Earth," she announced to the gathered officials. "They've declared our rescue of the Loraxians an unacceptable interference in natural selection and have imposed immediate trade sanctions against us." The room erupted in angry voices. Earth had only recently gained access to galactic trade routes. The advanced technology they were beginning to receive had helped solve many problems. Now it would all stop. "They're cutting off medical supplies," continued Admiral Wong. "The new cancer treatments, the clean energy converters, all suspended until we return the Loraxians to their natural fate." Captain Amara, who had been invited to the meeting as the mission leader, stood up. "For they want us to send the Loraxians back to die." "Exactly," nodded the Admiral. "And there's more. They've released statements claiming that humans cannot be trusted with the Loraxians. They're telling everyone that we'll eventually eat them. Once resources get scarce." Laughter broke out across the room despite the serious situation. "Eat them? They're walking plants," exclaimed the Brazilian president. "Do they think we're complete monsters?" But the humor faded quickly as they realized the seriousness of the situation. Earth needed those trade relationships. The global economy had begun to depend on them. "What about the restoration project for the Loraxian homeworld?" asked Dr. Patel. "We were counting on Council technology to speed up the process. We'll have to do it without them," Admiral Wong said simply. That evening, the news went public. Screens around the world showed the Council's accusations, followed by images of the thriving Loraxians in their Earth biodomes. People gathered in homes and public spaces to watch. "The Council believes we should abandon the Loraxians to extinction," announced the United Earth President in a global broadcast. "They believe this is the natural order. They have cut off trade to force our hand." The President paused, looking directly into the camera. "We must now ask ourselves, what kind of species are we? Will we abandon those who depend on us when it becomes difficult? Or will we stand by our commitments, whatever the cost?" The response was overwhelming. By morning, volunteer lists had filled with names of engineers, scientists, and ordinary citizens offering to help. Farmers pledged extra crops to support the biodomes. University students offered to postpone their studies to work on the restoration projects. In Tanzania, local villages delivered handmade gifts to the Loraxian biodome: colorful clothes, toys for the children, musical instruments. In Brazil, people planted thousands of trees in patterns visible from space that spelled out "Loraxians welcome." The Loraxians themselves were stunned by this reaction. They had called an emergency meeting of their own elders after hearing the news. "The humans will suffer because of us," said one elder sadly. Perhaps we should accept our fate, return home, and spare them this hardship. Thallo, who had become a respected leader among the Earth Loraxians, shook his head. I don't think the humans would allow that. They see things differently than the Council does. That same day, a small delegation of Loraxians requested a meeting with Earth leaders. They were welcomed into the United Earth Council chamber, where Captain Amara served as their translator. We have heard about the sanctions, said Thallo, his leaf skin shimmering with emotion. We cannot ask you to suffer for our sake. If you must send us back, we understand. The room fell silent. Then an old human woman, the representative from Kenya, stood up. When I was a child, she said, my village faced a terrible drought. We had little food, but a neighboring village that had even less sent us their children to care for. When I asked my grandmother why they would share when they had so little, she told me, hard times don't change who you are. They reveal who you are. She looked directly at the Loraxians. This is who humans are. We do not abandon those who need us, even when it costs us something. Around the world, people began finding ways to replace the lost Council technology. Engineers worked overtime to improve Earth's own versions of medical devices. Farmers developed new methods based on Loraxian techniques to increase food production. On the Loraxian homeworld, the small team of human scientists continued their work despite losing Council support. They planted the first test fields of the special carbon capturing plants, watching with excitement as they grew faster than expected. Back in the biodomes, Loraxian children began learning human languages without translators. Human children visited more frequently, no longer afraid of their plant-like neighbors. A month after the sanctions began, a small Council observation ship secretly visited Earth. They expected to find humans angry at the Loraxians, perhaps beginning to regret their choice. Instead, they saw humans and Loraxians working side by side, finding solutions together, becoming friends despite their differences. The Council observers returned to their worlds confused by what they had witnessed. Something unexpected was happening on Earth, something that challenged everything the Council believed about the natural order of life in the galaxy. Captain, Amara stood on the bridge of the Hope, watching through the viewscreen as the Loraxian planet grew larger. It looked different now than it had 3 years ago. Patches of vibrant green had replaced the dying brown areas. White clouds gathered around the mountains where there had been only hazy skies before. It's working, she whispered, almost afraid to believe it. Behind her, the mixed crew of humans and Loraxians prepared for landing. Dr. Patel checked his readings one last time, his face tired but hopeful. For 3 years they had worked without stopping, planting new forests, cleaning the water, stabilizing the atmosphere. The air quality is within safe parameters for Loraxian biology, he announced. Oxygen levels are up 17% from our last reading. Carbon dioxide is down 23%. A cheer went up from the Loraxian crew members. Many of them hadn't seen their homeworld since they were evacuated as children. Now they were returning as adults, trained in both human and Loraxian science. As the ship descended through the atmosphere, they could see the massive environmental processes that human engineers had built across the planet. Giant towers pulled in bad air and released clean air. Fields of special plants created by Loraxian botanists spread across the formerly dead zones, their deep roots breaking up the hard soil so water could flow again. The Hope landed near what had once been the Loraxian capital city. Most of the buildings were empty now, with their residents living in Earth's biodomes. But a small team of human and Loraxian scientists had stayed behind, living in sealed structures while they fought to save the planet. The head scientist, Dr. Aisha, was waiting when they stepped off the ship. She looked thinner than when Captain Amara had last seen her, but her eyes were bright with excitement. "You won't believe what's happening," she said, hugging the captain. "Come see for yourselves." They followed her to a testing field where the first experimental plants had been planted 3 years ago. The area had been completely dead then, just dry, cracked soil. Now it was a lush garden of strange plants, with blue-green leaves that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. "These carbon eaters are working better than we hoped," Dr. Aisha explained. "They're pulling greenhouse gases from the air 50 times faster than Earth's best plants. And the soil bacteria the Loraxians engineered is spreading on its own, bringing life back to dead areas." An elderly Loraxian named Vela knelt and placed her leaf hand on the soil. Tears formed in her eyes. "I never thought I would feel my world healthy again," she said. "When the council left us, I believed we were finished." Captain Amara remembered that terrible day when the council ships had abandoned the Loraxians. She remembered how hopeless it had seemed. Now, looking around at what human determination and Loraxian knowledge had accomplished together, she felt a surge of pride. "The northern forests are ready for the first returning families," said Dr. Aisha. "We've prepared 5 villages with new homes built to capture solar energy for the Loraxians. They can move in immediately." The next day, they traveled to the northern continent. The forests there had been the first target of their restoration efforts. Tall trees with spiral trunks reached toward the sky, their branches full of purple fruit. Streams of clear water cut through meadows of soft grass. The air smelled sweet and clean. "This is where we'll build the new capital," explained Thalo, who had become the leader of the Loraxian government in exile on Earth. "Not a copy of what we had, but something better. Cities that work with nature instead of just existing beside." Human engineers and Loraxian builders had already started construction. The buildings were unlike anything on Earth, part living plants, part sustainable materials. Solar collectors shaped like giant flowers turned to follow the sun. Water systems captured morning dew and recycled every drop. "We're incorporating everything we learned on Earth," said Thalo. "Before, we just lived on our planet. Now we'll be caretakers of it." That evening, as the Loraxian sun set, Captain Amara sat with Dr. Patel on a hillside overlooking the new settlement area. Construction lights twinkled below as work continued through the night. "Do you think the Council knows how much progress we've made?" she asked. Dr. Patel nodded. "Their observation ships pass by regularly. They must be surprised. They thought this planet was doomed. And they thought humans would give up when things got hard," added the captain. A group of young Loraxians approached them carrying something covered with a cloth. They were some of the first children who had been evacuated to Earth, now grown into teenagers. "We made something for you," said one, unveiling a beautiful sculpture. It showed a human hand and a Loraxian hand reaching toward each other, connected by a small sprouting seed. "It's for all humans," explained another. "To thank you for not giving up on us." Captain Amara touched the sculpture gently. "We never considered any other option." As darkness fell, they could see the planet's 3 moons rising. In the valley below, humans and Loraxians continued working side by side, rebuilding a world that the most advanced species in the galaxy had declared beyond saving. "Tomorrow the first families arrive from Earth," said Dr. Patel. "The beginning of the return." Captain Amara smiled. "The beginning of something much bigger, I think." 5 years after the first rescue ships had arrived at the dying Loraxian world, a grand ceremony took place in the newly rebuilt capital city. The central plaza was filled with thousands of Loraxians who had returned home from Earth. Above them, Earth ships hovered alongside the few remaining biodome transport vessels making their final trips. Thalo, now the official leader of the Loraxian people, stood on a platform made from living trees that had grown into the shape of a stage. Beside him stood Captain Amara, Admiral Wong, Dr. Patel, and other humans who had led the restoration project. "Today marks the return of the last Loraxian families from Earth," announced Thalo, his voice carrying across the silent crowd. "Our world is healed, our people are home, and we owe our very existence to the humans who refused to let us die." The crowd erupted in cheers, their leaf hands waving in the air, creating a rippling sea of green. Many of the Loraxians wore small pins showing the Earth alongside their own planet, a symbol of their connection. "When the Galactic Council abandoned us, they said it was natural selection," continued Thalo. "They said some species are meant to survive and others to perish, but the humans showed us a different truth, that intelligence and compassion can overcome even the harshest natural laws." Captain Amara stepped forward when Thalo gestured to her. She had aged during these 5 years, her hair now streaked with grey, lines around her eyes from countless nights of work, but her voice was strong as she addressed the crowd. "We didn't help you because we wanted anything in return," she said simply. "We helped because that's what humans do. We look out for each other, regardless of what planet we come from. Later that day in the Great Council Chamber, Tharlo and the Loraxian elders signed a formal alliance with Earth. It was the first such agreement between humans and another species that hadn't been arranged through the Galactic Council. With this document, said Admiral Wong as she added her signature, Earth and Lorax become official allies, promising mutual aid, shared knowledge, and friendship for all generations to come. News of the alliance spread quickly across the galaxy. On dozens of world's beings watched the ceremony on their viewing devices. Council members shifted uncomfortably in their chambers, watching as the species they had condemned to extinction celebrated their survival. What worried the Council most wasn't just that the Loraxians had survived. It was what came after. Within weeks of the ceremony, ships from 3 other worlds arrived at Earth requesting meetings. These were species that the Council had also deemed evolutionarily challenged, beings struggling with their own planetary changes. The humans helped the plant people, said the ambassador from a water world called Aqueous. Perhaps they can help us too. Earth welcomed these new visitors, listening to their problems, offering what help they could. Human scientists began traveling to these worlds, bringing with them the lessons learned from saving Lorax. Even more concerning to the Council was how other, more established galactic species began viewing humans. Once dismissed as primitive carnivores barely worth notice, humans were now seen as problem solvers, as beings who found ways when others saw none. 6 months after the Loraxian ceremony, a council ship arrived at Earth, carrying their highest representatives. They requested a formal meeting with Earth's leaders and the Loraxian delegation. In the United Earth Council chamber, the blue-skinned Azurian representative spoke first. "We have observed the restoration of the Loraxian homeworld," she said stiffly. "The Council acknowledges that our assessment of the situation was incomplete." Captain Amara, sitting with the Earth delegation, raised an eyebrow at this non-apology, but remained silent. "Therefore," continued the Azurian, "the Council hereby lifts all sanctions against Earth and extends an invitation for humans to join the Galactic Advisory Committee." Admiral Wong leaned forward. "And the Loraxians? Will they also be welcomed back into galactic society?" The Council members looked uncomfortable. "The Loraxian status will be reconsidered," said one reluctantly. Tharlo stood up, his leaf skin shimmering with emotion. "We are not interested in rejoining a council that abandoned us. Earth recognizes us as equals. Unless the Council does the same, we will maintain our independent alliance with humanity." The chamber erupted in applause from the Earth delegates. The Council representatives looked shocked at this defiance from a species they had written off as doomed. That evening, as the Council ship prepared to depart, Captain Amara stood with Tharlo watching the sunset over the new Loraxian capital. The city glowed with soft biolights that needed no electricity, a technology the Loraxians had developed during their time on Earth. "Do you think the Council has really changed?" asked Tharlo. Captain Amara shook her head. "Not yet, but they're beginning to understand that their way isn't the only way. That's a start." Below them in the city square, Loraxian and human children played together. Some of the human families had chosen to stay on Lorax as permanent ambassadors. Their children were learning to speak the Loraxian language, while Loraxian children taught them how to feel the vibrations of growing plants. "The Council thinks in terms of millions of years," said Tharlo. "They see species rise and fall like seasons, but humans think differently. We're too stubborn to accept what seems inevitable," Captain Amara agreed with a smile. As darkness fell, the stars began to appear, thousands of bright points in the night sky. Among them were worlds where life struggled, where beings faced challenges that seemed too great to overcome. But now those worlds had a new option. They could call Earth. "The universe is changing," said Tharlo quietly, "and we get to be part of that change." Captain Amara nodded, watching as more stars appeared above them. "That's the thing about being human. We never believe anything is truly impossible.